Hey everyone, it's Allie, and oh my god, patch 3.25 is going to literally be the single best patch of Path of Exile that we've had in a very, very long time. What I want to do today is give you a quick TLDR of all the major changes that are coming for this patch, while glossing over some of the more minor changes that I don't really feel like are really that worth mentioning, or things that you most likely are going to forget even if I do mention them. With that said, let's get into it, let's talk about everything, and let's get you on your way to being excited about 3.25 just like I am, because holy, this is going to be good. So the first major change we should mention here is going to be the lead mechanic itself. The lead mechanic is going to be all about you building a town with all of the Calgarian members from Expedition. This will require you to go out into maps and collect ore by just simply clicking on it and then simply doing a quick event before the ore being extracted by your miners. Everything to do with this mechanic is actually going to be time gated, and it's going to kind of be like an idle game where everything happens in real time instead of it happening instantly. You'll have miners, which will come and mine the ore deposit that you find in your map, and they'll take us several minutes to do that before fully bringing all of the resources over to your town. Inside of your town, you'll be able to upgrade your buildings and get various buffs. And one of the major things that we should mention here is that you'll be able to send out ships with some of the resources that you gather on trading expeditions, which will then bring you inventories worth of loot back, kind of like a Trojan 2.0, with the main thing that we care about from these trips being the new runes that are only accessible from these trips specifically. These runes are going to be utilized in doing new crafting recipes, which are going to put new enchants on your weapons that are going to be very, very powerful. We are going to have a set of generic ones, and I'm sorry this picture is super blurry, but it's the best one we have, and these are going to be ultra cheap enchants that you'll be able to put on whatever weapon you want that give you a plethora of buffs. From everything we see here, we can expect that every keystone is most likely going to be covered by these enchants, meaning that you're going to be able to get yourself a keystone or potentially two keystones if you're dual wielding of your choice for whatever build you want to play, as well as some other really cool and nifty things. A thing here to mention at the bottom, as you can see, projectiles return to you, meaning Vengeance Cascade is basically back in the game, meaning that Nemesis is not required anymore, and allowing all projectile builds to have a very fun playstyle again. These are going to be the cheap ones. As you can see, these are most likely going to cost the sun runes, which are going to be the plentiful ones, but we're also going to have very expensive ones, which are going to cost quite a lot of runes, giving you very powerful effects. One of them that we have here is Socketed Ball Skills have 100% reduced soul gain prevention duration, which would pair really well with Hateforge, allowing you to play the old, overpowered Hateforge builds of the past. One caveat about the system is that these are going to be tied to specific bases, for example, with the ball skills being only applicable to specifically daggers. This is going to be a little bit of a handicap on how overpowered these builds are going to be, but they're still going to be fun to figure out and to build around, and I honestly think we're going to be seeing ourselves some fairly silly builds, especially given that Hateforge, even with a dagger, is completely back, given you could play Vol, Lightning Strike, and you just run a Squire to get yourself a 6-link. Moving on from there, we also have ourselves two major Ascendancy reworks coming for 3.25. I'm going to be covering these in more detail tomorrow in its own separate video, but we have the Gladiator rework, which is looking to fix all the block nodes on Gladiator, making them substantially stronger, while making the bleed portion of Gladiator even more powerful than before, and solidifying Gladiator's place as a melee ascendancy, with Weapon Master massively boosting your stats based on whichever weapon you equip. Gladiator's rework is sick, especially due to Jagged Technique and Aggravated being insane, as Aggravated just makes an enemy count as if they're moving, tripling the damage of your bleed at all times, and Gladiator should be in an amazing spot for the future. We also have the Raider rework, where Raider is completely being removed from the game, and instead a new ascendancy called Warden is going to take its place. This is going to be a mix of some really interesting ailment-based nodes on the left and a bunch of Wildwood Warden nodes on the right. First off, tinctures are back in the game, and while everyone can use tinctures are going to be substantially stronger on Warden, allowing you to make them apply to your ranged weapons and even potentially have two of them active at the same time. Tinctures are not going to be permanent uptime like they were in Affliction. The best way to think about them would be long-term flasks, where they slowly start draining your mana, and then once you go they turn off with a cooldown before you can turn them back on. While the left side of the tree probably being some of the most broken nodes that we've ever seen in Path of Exile. Oath of Summer is going to allow you to apply double scorches, which is a lot of additional DPS, while Oath of Spring is going to allow you to stack up to 50 shocks on an enemy, giving you 100% more damage. Finally, Avatar of the Winds is going to give you stacks for every ailment you apply to an enemy, allowing you to press a new skill, Unbound, at 100 stacks, give you 80% more damage for 10 seconds. This class is going to be great with elemental hits, and we can very easily see elemental hit Warden becoming a top tier build, allowing you to have some pretty insane clear and probably some pretty insane damage on demand as well. To move on from there, let's talk about all of the changes that are coming to the core of the game. First off, Magic Find is gone. It's dead. That's it. It's just gone from the game. They are removing quant from every single item, and they are instead replacing it with rarity, meaning that you will not see people just generating unbelievable amounts of random raw currency into the game or unbelievable amounts of divination cards. This is something that I've been waiting for a very long time to see in the game. I think a lot of people have never really been happy with Magic Find, so it's great to see it being completely removed. To add on to this, they are also going to globally buff the drops that every single player gets. So if you were a player that never played Magic Find and just did maps normally, you will now see a slight increase in the total amount of loot that you'll see across all monsters. To add on to this, they are also reworking tier 17 maps. And well, GGG actually realized that all T17 maps gained the monster scaling twice over, meaning that T17 maps were actually closer to T18 maps, and they're nerfing the health of all tier 17 monsters by 50% and their damage by 30%. This by itself is going to make tier 17 maps substantially easier to actually do, meaning that suddenly almost all mid-tier and endgame builds should very easily be able to farm T17 maps. They're also going to be nerfing how good tier 17 quant is specifically, meaning that they're going to be substantially closer to a tier 16 map in terms of total loot gained, making it so you're not going to really feel that bad if you want to do your strategy in a T16 over a T17. They're also going to be reworking a plethora of Scarabs, where they are going to either be reworking them into making them substantially better, straight up removing some of the more useless ones, or removing them and adding some of the things that the Scarabs were doing onto passive trees in the Atlas skill tree. We are also going to be getting a 6th map slot on top of this. Not only are Scarabs better and the useless ones are cold, but you'll be able to juice with an additional Scarab, allowing you to make your maps even better. This new one is going to come from the Maven 10-way invitation, meaning that you're still going to have to do a T17 for one of your slots and then a Maven 10-way for the other one. To move on to all of the balance changes, Melee is finally back. Almost all melee skills are being buffed by around 70% or so, with some being buffed by more, some being buffed by less, but on average, according to GG, is about a 70% more damage increase for all melee builds. They're also removing ancestral totems completely from the game, meaning you no longer have to be gimped when you're playing melee by having to constantly put down the totem, and well, if your totem died, you effectively lost a large chunk of your damage, meaning that melee overall gained quite a lot of amazing quality of life. Pretty much every single melee skill has been buffed, so simply go and choose whichever one is your favorite and go have fun playing it. They've also buffed bleed fairly heavily, with a lot of the bleed nodes on the tree becoming substantially better. So if you're a bleed enjoyer, go have fun and enjoy bleed builds because they're now finally viable once again. They're also reworking rage. Not only are they making it so berserk and rage itself does not give you increased attack speed and cast speed, but they're changing it to where gaining rage on hit is now substantially easier than it was before, allowing you to get 10-20 rage per second fairly easily. And they're making it so every point of rage is going to give you 1% more attack damage versus the 1% increased damage I gave you before. Berserk is now going to give you increased rage effect, which means with a max level Berserk, you'll have 1.5 more attack damage per point of rage that you have. And in my opinion, I really like this change, given that it's going to feel really good to generate rage with not too many issues, while at the same time it offering you quite a lot of additional damage and it being something that is very easy to fit into literally every single melee build, as they are adding lots of rage on hit all over the passive tree for you to pick up. Outside of that, in terms of nerfs, they are completely killing all corpse builds, and we will no longer see DD rule the game anymore, as they are both making it so specters in your desecrate pool are going to be substantially less common, while at the same time capping desecrate to level 80 monsters instead of level 100 monsters, which is a massive reduction in corpse health, meaning that all corpse skills are going to do substantially less damage. And to add on to this, they're also nerfing hatred builds by completely removing the more cold damage on hatred and instead replacing it with more physical as extra cold. This is going to suck for bow builds, for example, but most of bow skills also ended up getting buffed at the same time, meaning that this might most likely be a wash, or if anything, just a minor nerf overall to bow builds and not really something that would kill the archetype off. They're also nerfing Determination and Grace to give you less flat values on their respective defensive stats, but you have to take this with a grain of salt because we're getting quite a lot of new bases added into the game that are going to be substantially better than the bases we already have. For example, a Vol Regalia is no longer going to be the best ES base in the game, and we're getting new helmet, gloves, boots, and body armor bases, meaning that this flat armor and evasion that you're losing from these auras will be completely made up by the increased effective bases if you end up playing those specific base types in your build. If you are playing, for example, an evasion build that has a bunch of evasion bases and you decide to run determination, obviously the determination is now going to be substantially weaker than before, but hopefully the added evasion from your evasion bases should make up for it. The other thing to mention is that the tree, especially around the Templar and Marauder section of the tree, is getting a lot of additional maximum resistance added to it, which will make it so hitting 90% all res is a lot easier for builds that want to do that. And they are buffing endurance charges to where they're now going to, instead of giving you additional elemental resistances, they're going to make you take less elemental damage, meaning that endurance charges are now something that pretty much every single build in the game wants to make sure they can fit into their build somehow. Finally, to add into all of these nerfs, we are getting a nerf to physical damage taken as, to where the majority of sources of physical damage taken as, such as Taste of Hate, Watch Eye mods, helmet rolls on Eldritch Implicids, and quite a lot of other sources, such as a Lethal Pride Phys taken as, are either being nerfed or completely removed from the game. I am assuming the reason they're doing this is because the endurance charge change is going to kind of make up for a lot of this, as a lot more builds are going to now want to make sure they add endurance charges into it. And because armor bases are now going to be stronger, you should have a little bit of an easier time dealing with physical damage taken, given that they've nerfed a lot of the monster modifiers that give them additional overwhelm, making them do substantially more physical damage to you than before. They did not nerf Coca Flame and Lightning Coil, meaning that the very large chunks of physical taken as elemental are still in the game. And for the majority of builds, this should honestly be quite fine, with you expecting yourself to maybe be a little bit squishier to Phys damage than before. The last thing that they changed was making pretty much all wand, claw, and dagger bases better, with daggers having all their bases gain increased attack speed and increased base critical strike chance, and with all the other melee weapons gaining a lot more base critical strike chance on them, meaning that getting crit cap should be even easier than before. I honestly am very excited about all these changes because this should honestly make the game a lot better. Not only do we have an auction house, and the league mechanic itself looks to be pretty fun, as Magic in Town does actually seem fairly interesting, and I personally think I'm gonna get pretty addicted to it. But the fact that melee is playable now, the fact that bleed is playable now, the fact that Gladiator is an ascendancy that actually exists in Path of Exile is all amazing to me. A lot of people are excited about the 50, 60 melee skills that all got buffed by 70% or so that are now super playable. And because not many things really got nerfed, we are most likely going to have the highest diversity we've ever seen for League Starter builds, and I am truly excited about that. With all the potentials of this season making the endgame better through T17 maps being less awful to do, and with a lot of the Scarabs being reworked into better items that people actually want to utilize, and with the fact that we have an auction house, I think this is going to be the single best season of Path of Exile we've ever had. This is honestly going to be like Affliction, where everyone just kept playing, nobody wanted to quit, and the player retention was just incredibly high. I know the auction house change alone is going to massively increase player retention, as a lot of people started quitting as it got frustrating to try and buy basic supplies. So we should honestly strap in for a very long season of Path of Exile where everyone's just going to have fun. If you have any questions on anything that we went over here, feel free to leave a comment in the comments below. Or if you want an explanation on anything further, or if you'd like my opinion on some of these changes, I'd be more than happy to either give you some more insight or answer your questions in the comments below. Or if you want to come by on Twitch, I stream every single day, and I'd be more than happy to answer any sort of questions, comments, or concerns that you might have about the patch. Or if you just want to come and join all the cuties and be a part of our community, I'd also be happy to see you there along with everyone else. With all that said, cuties, I hope to see you all in the next few videos that we're going to be doing, uncovering 3.25, as I have quite a lot to say about this patch and quite a lot to say about all the changes. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope to see you all in the next video.